Sumlin was going to be with the team virtually, at least until he gets back. It sounds like he'll be back sometime next week. At least that would be probably the most ideal thing. But even if Sumlin wasn't going to be there for the first couple days of camp, I think Paul Rhodes has that head coaching experience when he was at Iowa. So, I mean, if things were to kind of be a mess during practice, I think he would be the guy to kind of lead that. But yeah, it's just not having your head coach for the first couple days of practice. It's just one more thing you have to deal with. And I don't know, just this team is already kind of full of question marks, and that's just one more thing. So I don't know, it's going to be tough for sure.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree. And after them releasing the schedule last Saturday, they didn't give us any breaks there either.
Yeah, well, why don't we talk about the schedule, actually, because that'll bring us to our next topic. This team has had a ton of things to sort out before the season. So, I mean, with Arizona, it's going to hit them. That start of the season is going to hit them like a truck, right? I mean, because that start of the season is just brutal, right? Like, I think you start off right out of the gate, you're playing Utah on the road. And then, that following week, you come home to play USC. And then, you hit the road again to go play Washington before you're coming down to UCLA. So just the 3 of the first 4 weeks are all on the road. So, I mean, what do you kind of make of this? I mean, compared to kind of the other teams in the Pac-12, how do you think Arizona did you think they got an easier or worse schedule? Because those first 4 weeks, I mean, you're playing 3 teams that are obviously, like, arguably the 3 better teams in the conference, right? Like, USC is probably projected to win the South, maybe even projected to win the whole thing in the Pac-12. So, I don't know. It just seems like the schedule is brutal. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't give us any breaks. They didn't give the Wildcats anything, like, with this schedule. Like, it's an extremely difficult schedule. I mean, just looking at it, I like even like UCLA for a team who's like not projected to be that good, but like that game's on the road too, and like we don't play well on the road, so like that's not a gimme either. So like I realistically I see one win on this schedule, and that's Colorado. I mean, they're projected to be, by all accounts that I've seen, like the worst team in the Pac-12. So that's the only win that stands out to me. I mean, they're going to struggle at all these games. Like having started off with the 3 tough opponents, and then coming home for Colorado, and then finishing off with ASU. Like ASU, like that's, I know it's a rivalry game, but like I don't see any way we keep that close with how they're projected this upcoming season.
Okay, now I see this team capable of at least 2 wins. Like I said, maybe 3, just because ASU is always a toss-up game, regardless of how well good or each team is playing. Since it's a rivalry game, I feel like everyone always shows out. So I think that's always a toss-up game. But I mean, you're a little less optimistic than I am, and some people might even say that you're a lot more realistic than I am, and I'm the crazy one. And honestly, I think I am.
Yeah, who do you realistically see? Like I just don't see them beating UCLA, Colorado, and ASU. Like first of all, they're back games, and like they're not going to beat all 3 of them. And the other 3, like they're not winning. I would be shocked if they beat Utah, USC, or Washington. Any of those 3.
Okay, so I think UCLA is a winnable game. So give me your take on UCLA. Why do you think that game is going to be a struggle? Because I'll let you go first, and then I'll make my statement. But I think UCLA is a pretty winnable game.
Yeah, I think that's a winnable game. I mean, I like DTR. I mean, I want to see what he can prove. I mean, he's a good young player, and just being on the road, like I just don't. I don't like our chances there. I mean, I think Coach Chip Kelly could have a bounce back season fighting for his job. Hasn't had much success in the past few years, so I'm not saying we lose that game, but I'm not saying it's a gimme. Like, because I think they're going to win that game or the Colorado. I think they're going to win one of those 2.
I think there's a chance they win both. I mean, Chip Kelly is arguably in the same position that Kevin Sumlin is in right now, where there's a ton of pressure on him to win with a below-average roster. So, like, UCLA, they have to replace a few different players on both sides of the ball, right? They lost Joshua Kelly. They lost the number 1 corner last season. So, I mean, they've got a ton of holes on that team as well. And that team wasn't good last year, really. So, like, it was already kind of mediocre, and now you lost a couple guys, and it could be even worse. And Arizona beat them last year. That was Ganell's first start where he lit up that defense. So, you look at that defense and where it was last year and what it might be this year. I don't think it got any better. I think it got worse from this year to last year. So I think that's a pretty winnable game in itself. And obviously Colorado, I can't see that Arizona has no business losing that game. I mean, they're just a wreck over there. They lost Laviska Shenault. They lost Tony Brown. Their quarterback situation is all up in the air right now. I mean, not to mention they have a completely new head coach. So, I mean, as questionable as Arizona may be, I still find it impossible to lose that game against Colorado. And I think UCLA is a winnable game as well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, those two games are the best games, the best chance. I mean, that Arizona has this year. I mean, like out of the first three games, like Washington, like they played them close last year. So like that one out of the first three, I would predict to be a little closer. But I think it'll be tough. I mean, also depending on who we get in the seventh game.
Right. Yeah. I was actually just going to bring that up. I think an interesting piece to this is that we don't know what that seventh game is going to be like. So if Arizona ends up only winning, one or two games, I mean, there's a chance that they end up playing, the other terrible team in the North, right? So like against, Washington State or Oregon State. I mean, how do you like Arizona's chances against, Washington State and Oregon State or any other team that you see is pretty terrible in the North? I mean, do you think that there's a chance that Arizona wins that seventh game?
Yeah. I do. I mean, because if they don't do too well, I mean, they're probably going to get during the first six. They're probably going to get paired with one of those lesser teams. So yeah, I think Oregon State, Washington State, yeah, they can have a win there. So yeah, all right. Since that hasn't been announced, I was saying one, but like I think they could win that game too. So two, maybe three at the highest, but I don't see that happening.
I mean, I think both Washington State and Oregon State are pretty winnable as well. I mean, Washington State more so than Oregon State. I mean, Washington State's quarterback situation is, another terrible situation right now. I don't think they even have a guy on the roster that has taken any college snaps yet. So, I mean, I'm banking on that to, be the decider. But I think Max Borgi, however, is pretty legit. So I think Washington State will go as far as they take him. But I think that's a pretty winnable game in itself. Their defense is not very good. Oregon State isn't terrible. I don't think they're awful, but I actually think they'll be a lot better this year. But I don't know. I still see the Pac-12, or I still see Oregon State far off from the other Pac-12 schools. So I kind of see Oregon State in that same, level of play than Arizona. So I think that's a pretty winnable game as well. So I don't know. As much as you want to trash on Arizona, we have to remember that there's a couple of terrible teams in the Pac-12 as well. So like I think Arizona has some chances against some of those other teams.
Yeah. As I said, I love Arizona's offense. I think they're going to score a lot of points, and that's what's going to keep them in the games. I mean, their defense not so much as we discussed, but the real question that I've been just thinking to myself is like if this team does like win, would I like so if they win like 1 to 2 games like out of 7, I'm just saying like how does Kevin Sumlin come back? Like that's what I'm wondering. Because like, how many years can you let this go on? Just being mediocre and below. Like that's what I'm really wondering.
I don't know. I mean, for me, it's kind of hard to fire someone after everything that this pandemic has put people through this year. With a 7-game season, it's so hard to coach, right? Because there's no room for error. But I mean, I don't really know. I don't think you can really fire him after this season. You have to buy out his contract, which I don't think Arizona can do right now. So, I mean, especially with the recruiting class he's got in 2021, maybe it's one of those situations where you just let him ride it out. But going back to the schedule, the thing that kind of concerns me the most is just the beginning of the schedule, because the beginning of the season sets the tone for the rest of the way, right? Like those 4 games are brutal for Arizona. So there's a chance that they can go 1-3 or maybe 0-4. Like how do you like find the motivation to like finish off the season if you're 0-4 or 1-3? Like those 4 games are going to set the tone for the entire year. So like that's what I'm most concerned about. It's just like you're going to be looking, you finish your 4th game. It's like, oh my God, at best, you're 1-3. Like I don't know what to do from here. Like there's not a lot of hope. So like, how do you have that motivation to finish out the season? It's going to be tough. Like I wish the back half of Arizona's schedule was more was more harder, and the beginning was more favorable towards them. So that's my number one concern, is that it's just like that beginning of the season. It's just so scary.
Yeah, and it's just really hard on the players for like Grant Cano, like it's his first year starting, and like it just gets in your head, and like then he's gonna be like, if they go 0-2, 0-3, 0 whatever, like out of the first like few games, then he's gonna be like, could be throwing it more, maybe some picks, and that's just like how you lose confidence. And for like a guy that's so talented like he is, like ranked up there with all the top quarterbacks in all of college football, like that just it's gonna be a big hurdle to get over. I mean, yeah, there's no room for error in those first few games.
So I mean, these first 4 games, I mean, we like Arizona's offense. I like Arizona offense as well. I mean, Utah's defense is okay. We were talking about it on the pre-show actually, just how like we thought that Utah's defense was overrated last year, and I kind of agree with that. They didn't really show up and play well against a good offense. So if Arizona is actually a good offense, do you like their chances against Utah, or is it just that road game is just too tough for them?
I think it's that road game, and it's just like Utah, like even like last year, you called it down year. They had 8 wins. Like they've been winning 10 games, whatever. Like they win a lot of games every year, and like they're just always competitive and on the road to start the team like the season with this young roster. Like I would be shocked if they could win, but hopefully they can keep it close at least for first half or so.
What about USC? Because I don't think USC's defense is all that nice. So like, is there a chance that Arizona's offense can trump the USC defense? You know, they're at home. You know, it's only week 2, so like, you know, the hopes aren't completely out the window yet. I mean, what do you think about that?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I just in general, a lot of these games, like I think their offense is going to keep up with a lot of these teams because like a lot of these teams like don't have great offenses because like ASU, young quarterback, like a lot of schools, young quarterbacks trying to break them in. So like I think yeah, they're going to put up points. It's just going to be like the defense in the end. Like I don't think they're going to be able to stop anyone, especially early in the season, and maybe later against ASU. That's the only hope with the Arizona State game because it's one of the last games, and maybe the defense will pick it up then and be more of a group.
But what I'm more so interesting about is that I think everyone's defense is going to be pretty bad. Like, I mean, with this whole pandemic going on, like having to figure out this whole scheme, Arizona might be able to get away with having a terrible defense. And if this offense can show up and put some points on the board, maybe Arizona steals a couple of games. So I think that's a pretty interesting point to note is that like maybe everyone's going to be rusty. So if Arizona can figure it out on the offensive side of the ball, who knows? They may be walking out of here 2-2 in those first 4 games. I don't know. That's super optimistic, but I don't know. I think it's not like it's not like a pipe dream, right? To think that this team can go 2-2, at least in my opinion. I don't know. Am I being too optimistic again, Ryan? What do you think?
Yeah, I think a little bit, but there's always room to hope because, like you said, like we don't know what teams have been doing, practicing, like they've started and stopping. Like you don't know like if they're going to be like even the first 2 weeks, like you don't know if they're going to be up to speed right away. Because some of these teams, like it could hurt a team like USC's potential like playoff like hopes if they get off to a slow start. There's nothing you could do. Like as we talked about, there's no room for error. Like if like a team like USC, like if you go 0-2, you're out. You know. So
Yeah.
like yeah, it's going to be whoever's just coming out hot, firing right away.
I mean that is the other good thing about Arizona is that their expectations are a national championship or like college football playoffs or anything like that. So there's a little bit more room for error, but at the same time you don't want another 2-5 season. You want to go 3 or 4 at the worst, right? I mean 4-3 is probably where we want to be sitting at, but at least there is a little bit of room for error there. But and that does help a little bit. That if you trip up in the beginning of the season and you're 1-3. Maybe you can win out and save the season, or at least, you can lose one of those games along the way and still consider it an okay season.
Yeah, I mean, if they could somehow pull out like around 500, I mean, that would be like a win. Like that would like yeah, that would push this team's confidence to the next level. Like to next season, hopefully, where they have a full season, full like amount of games.
Well, I mean, although this